All right, good afternoon. This is a special city council workshop, 5 p.m. Tuesday, September 10th. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that the press and public were duly notified of the meeting in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. Nicole, roll call.
Councilmember Myers.
Here.
Councilmember Pierce.
Here.
Councilmember Anderson.
Here.
Councilmember Ward.
Here.
Councilmember Bogosian.
Here.
Councilmember Hahn is present but out of the room currently. Councilmember Carroll.
Here.
Mayor Pounds.
Here.
You have a quorum?
Thank you. First item is citizens' comments.
Well, it's going to be Mr. Bell, but it looks like Ms. Hack is up. Okay.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I haven't seen you in so long. So happy to see you. My name is Terry Hack, and I am the managing director of Wild Dunes Resort. I also represent the owners of Wild Dunes LLC, Low and Dart. Thank you all for your continued support to all of the residents and services that you provide for our visitors here on Isle of Palms. This evening, I'd like to provide a brief update for your information only, and I don't believe any action is needed. I am delighted to inform you that Johnson & Johnson, our valued long-term group for Wild Dunes Resort and for Isle of Palms, has decided to return to Wild Dunes and the Isle of Palms. We'll be hosting their 25th annual Client Success Retreat November 1st and 2nd, 2024. As you may recall, 2 years ago, they had a very robust and somewhat noisy event at the pool terrace at Sweetgrass. Again, we sincerely apologize that that happened. To minimize any potential impact on the surrounding community and the residents, we have relocated the event across from the Sweetgrass into the Sweetgrass Pavilion and the brick lot. We've been working with them for several months to make sure that this event will be very, very comfortable within the community setting that it's in. There'll be a tent over the brick lot, and they will also use indoor space at the Sweetgrass Pavilion. Please be assured that this event will strictly adhere to all of the city's quiet hours. Our dedicated resort staff will carefully monitor all of the activities to ensure compliance, and I personally will be there. I think that it's interesting to note that here we are, it's September, and I don't believe there have been any noise complaints this calendar year. And I'm very happy and proud of that fact. We are successfully working with our neighbors and doing our very best to be a good citizen. Thank you.
Terry, when is the event again? I missed it on your.
November 1st and 2nd.
Okay, thank you.
And very important to the city's accommodations taxes. It's a very big event. So.
Thank you. So, thank you. Next item is dashboard of city operations and short-term rental report. Desiree?
So not a lot of change since last month. That we are 2 months into the new fiscal year. So you can see there, it reflected under the first two tabs, the city revenues and expenditures. I'm very, very happy to announce that we do not have any vacancies in the fire department. We have hired the 3 paramedics that we have been actively recruiting for. 2 folks will start in November, and a 3rd person is moving from out of state and will be starting first of next year, January. So we're very excited about that. In terms of police department charges, we're still tracking ahead of the last 2 years in most charge type, including traffic, drug-related charges, and livability. For both the police and fire departments, the calls for service is lagging slightly compared to last year, but overall pretty stable. The other thing that I wanted to highlight, different from last month, is the number of homes permitted. You all recall that we were very conservative in our budgeting for building permits based on the activity from calendar year 23. Where less than half of the permits were issued. We're already ahead 8 months into the compared to 12 months last year. So we are trending in the right direction there. The short-term rental dashboard that you have in your packets shows that we have 1770 licenses issued as of the 3rd of September. We have 6 licenses that are pending, and I know folks like to track this and compare it to the same time last year. We prepared a report on October 7th for 2023, and at that time, we had issued 1,803 licenses.
1776 now?
Well, 1776 would include those that are pending, and that means they apply but have not yet paid.
Six of them.
We typically track the number at the top, licenses issued.
So it's slightly less. than
Slightly
last.
less than, 33 less than where we were at the same time last year.
I think the mix is up, though. The 6%ers are higher than last year, and the 4%ers are down about 40 compared to last year this time.
Well, are you looking at the distribution of 4% and 6% dwellings over time, or at the top?
Like where it says 1627, 6% licenses? You see that? STRs and 6% bucket.
Oh, okay, I didn't,
Yeah, we're higher in the 6%, we're lower in the
4%?
Or if you look at the distribution, 4%, 6% dwellings over time.
Stayed the
I'm
same.
looking year over year.
Yeah.
Top.
It's not,
So we're holding steady with the our 4% primary residents. So our permanent resident population is basically stabilized, is what this says. But we're changing between
Correct, between 4% and 6%.
second homeowners and short-term
Correct.
rentals. More short-term rentals, slightly fewer second homeowners.
So I don't have the report from last year. I would like to see it before talking about those numbers. I was referring to the distribution of 4% and 6% dwellings
Yeah.
over time compared to 2023 and 2024. It stayed
Yeah.
the same. I think Scott's referring to the,
Yeah, it's the September 7 from 23, it had us at 187 4%ers versus we're looking at about 143. And we had 1,616 6%ers, and we're looking at 1,627. So we're slightly higher on the 6%, and we've dropped about 40
Did,
or so on this
did
4%.
last year include the commercial condo?
it would have been the same,
Should
yes.
Yeah, it's apples, to apples.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's all I wanted to wanted to highlight, unless there are any specific questions. The number of court cases for August, it's slightly lower than last month, but that's just because we had to continue a lot of the cases during Tropical Storm Derby. We canceled the court, so we didn't have as many court cases handled the month of August, but we'll see that jump in September when you see that report.
And then departmental reports are included in your packet. Questions or comments? While we've got department heads here, if you have anything.
Just a question, we'll have a parking report next month?
Yes, I'm sorry, we did
You
not
didn't-
include it in the packet this month.
it's in here,
Is it?
yeah.
Yes, it is, it is.
PCI.
It's page 12 of the packet.
I have a quick comment. though.
Yeah.
Okay,
Go ahead, John.
I just have a question I'd like to, actually, Chief to maybe talk about. And when you look at our drug, gun, DUI, if you look at our larceny, very more serious crimes, you look at resisting, hindering, assaulting police officers, all those are pretty significantly up. And I'd just like to get the chief's opinion on what's happening in the city that drive these numbers up. And I think they're meaningfully up, and we've talked about it, Chief, as well. And I'd just like to get your thoughts on it.
Certainly. So there are a couple different things. When you do look at it, we have seen an increase in the gun violations, the distribution and trafficking level charges for narcotics, to include the possession of narcotics and marijuana and DUIs. And we track those for a reason. Those were the ones that stood out to me that were concerning in my experience as a police officer, where you have gun crimes and you have drug crimes. It leads to property crimes. It leads to violent crimes. And so we have tasked our officers with being very proactive in those areas. And a lot of these when you see the increase in traffic stops, we're seeing an increase in these charges as well that are coming from traffic stops. Some of these are coming from other calls. We have run across more hard drugs, I would say, than we had in the past, to include recently making a trafficking fentanyl case and somebody who's distribution level weight for methamphetamine. And we've had a lot more hard drugs out here this year than we had in the past. Some of that's got to do with the proactive approach to law enforcement or traffic stops. And some of that's just, I think, a swing that we're seeing nationwide where these drugs are becoming more prevalent to the point that we have recently joined forces with Charleston and North Charleston and Mount Pleasant in an opioid overdose team that we're now reporting and helping to track so that we can get help for individuals. But it's come to the point where we've had enough cases that become involved in that as to what's causing it. Part of it would be the traffic stops, the proactive approach, and part of it would just be that we have people that are more comfortable carrying illegal narcotics around here.
But Chief, it's going to be hard to draw this conclusion, but, part of hiring PCI was to allow you all to be more feet on the street and wherever else we needed you. I mean, could that be some of this too, do you think, or some
believe
combination?
Yes, sir. I definitely believe it plays a role when we're able to solely focus on the law enforcement aspects and not necessarily just the parking, trying to manage parking and law enforcement. We were able to be more proactive. And then we've got a lot of young officers who are very dedicated, and a lot of them very much dedicated to traffic enforcement and the enforcement of impaired driving. And so you see those numbers correlate that. They correlate to we're able to focus on the law enforcement career, right, exactly what that law enforcement goal that we have to prevent crime and to keep people safe. And so that you see that corresponding with those numbers going up as well.
Jimmy?
Is there any correlation at all since the concealed carry laws have changed?
No,
the
sir.
data?
I was actually a little surprised to find that we're still making gun charges after that. We've still had several stops where we've had individuals with stolen firearms or individuals who were convicted felons that weren't allowed to be in possession of them. Now, we've had more that would have been charges in the past that we've had to let them take the gun and not get a charge for it. And some of those in the past, we would have liked to have that ability to make that charge, but I was shocked to see that we're still making several gun charges for violations to the weapons. And some of those weapons violations, I do want to point out, remember we had the armed robbery back in June, and when you have those types of crimes, a weapons violation comes on top of that, such as possession of a weapon during a violent crime or illegal alien in possession of a firearm, those types of things.
Chief, just to the mayor's point, do you feel like we have the same amount of these type of more serious crimes going on in the island as we had before, but you're just catching more now because of the fact you have more time, more officers, more younger officers, all the factors you said? Or do you feel like we have more violent crimes now than what we had before? And of course, we're catching them because there are more. I mean, I'd like to understand your opinion on that.
I believe it's a mixture of both. I think the ability to be proactive has allowed us to catch more of it before it turns into a violent crime. It's here and it's been here, but I also believe that we've seen an increase in this. We started tracking these types of violations specifically because I noticed increases over years in the past, and I thought that was something that we needed to be paying attention to, is that we've had those. I do believe we've had an increase, but I also believe we've been proactive. The benefit to being proactive is we've seen a reduction, or we've stopped people before they were able to commit violent crimes against persons, which is our ultimate goal, is to keep people safe, keep property safe. And if we're able to be proactive and stop it before it turns into something where somebody is in an unsafe position or being victimized, then that is a positive aspect. It's a mixture of both, so to answer your question.
All right, thank you.
Chief, I'm going to go back to the less serious violations for just a second. And this is really more for just the public that's listening to all this. I know that we only had one rental property noise complaint in all of August, which I think is just fabulous all the way around. And so, I think that's a good thing, that what we did as council, as well as your police presence. And the second question was roll cart violations. What is that?
Roll call, trash
Is
cans.
that
Trash cans.
Those are the
trash
trash
cans?
cans that are
Leaving them out to
typically,
the
they're
river
left
returns.
out by the side of the road beyond the time that they're supposed to be out there or too early.
And could you explain what it means? Like, how do you get a violation? Like, if on my street, trash is picked up on Tuesday, when can I put the cart out there? When does it need to come back in?
So you've got a time at 5 PM, you can put it out, and then it's got to be put back up within a certain amount of time. Typically, our first approach is to come by, we put a little sticker on there that says, hey, and it's bright yellow, you can't miss it. We
I've
make
seen 'em.
sure to let them know that, hey, you have,
a
and
friend.
it spells out the parameter on the times that you have to have it in. And the specific ordinance, I don't know the times right off the top of my head, but there are certain guidelines as to when you can put it out, when you have to put it up. Some of these too would be if they don't conceal it from the roadway. Some people just roll it up beside the house and it's visible from the roadway, that is a violation. And we've worked with several residents to help give them some time where they can build the proper mechanisms to keep it out of sight.
So if you get a yellow sticker on your roll cart, you need to pay attention to it, is what you're saying?
Correct. It's not a ticket, and we get a lot of people who get the yellow sticker and they think they're getting a ticket, and it's actually just a notice of, hey, if you do this continually, you will get a ticket. This is just a notice that you were in violation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you,
And
Chief.
Blair, they have to be pulled back by 9 AM the day after service.
Okay.
You're good. Chief, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Desiree, thank you. Next item is financial review. Deborah, you got 2 months' worth of our fiscal year financial statements and another topic we need to hit on tonight. This
Yes,
is
sir.
all in your packet, so
Thank you.
we're on the screen. Thank you, Amy.
Just a few things I want to point out to everyone on our financial summary. All other funds have already met its budget because we receive the 1% insurance and inspection check that we normally get from the Charleston County. That came in at $283,000, and we budgeted $219,000. The majority of the other revenue that we're recognizing is interest, with the exception of hospitality tax, and we'll see that when we get to those schedules. As far as the expenses, they're all coming in line, and for the general fund, it's, of course, mostly payroll, and for the capital account, we have purchased a few capital items already for August. Down in the general fund, the one thing I want to point out is the parking. Parking is a timing difference because we don't recognize the revenue until we receive our parking reconciliation from PCI, and that's when they send us the revenue around the 20th of each month. On the second page of the financial summary, we have about $46 million in all cash, which $45 million of it is from our investment account, and we have about 1.1 in our operating fund. The unaudited numbers have been adjusted a little bit more because we did receive some funds in August that were applied to FY '24. So those fund balances have increased a little bit, and we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. We did receive 2 grants for August, one for public safety body armor and one for Parks and Rec development. The interest rate has decreased a little bit, but for the 2 months, we have received $206,000 in interest income and $409,000 for the year. So as of today, we don't expect any more. We are assuming that all the invoices and revenues have been recognized for FY '24, and the auditors will be here on Monday to start that process. As of today, if nothing changed, the general fund revenues exceeded expenses by approximately $1.7 million. The other thing that you have in your packet is the county did send the property value assessments for 2024. And we do not need to make any changes to the budget based on the numbers that we received. That we have an increase of 6.25 from the prior year. I do want to point out, though, in your packet, there's a calculation for the loss credit factor, and that is recommended at 0.0020, and that's the credit that from the property taxes that goes back to the residents.
Which is 100%.
Which is
credit back.
100%, that's correct.
Not that we're required to do that, but we do. It's been our history.
Absolutely. Do we need to go to that page? We need to go to the last page or keep going through?
Yeah, keep-
Okay, so I want to go ahead and jump to the tourism schedules, because the cash needs schedules, it's just updated with what we've seen so far. And like I said, we have had some capital purchases already. We've purchased 2 UTVs, which are the beach gators that we use on the beach. We purchased a mini excavator and a golf cart. For the tourism fund, the amount that we're recognizing in July is $248,000. We haven't received anything for the state because that comes in quarterly. Our pass-through, those numbers, I think we talked about that last time, was $211,000. And our hospitality tax for the month that we're recognizing for July was $214,000. So we're at 20% with those 2 numbers that we have for June and July. We're 20% ahead of last year's numbers, prior year. The Beach Preservation Fund is the same as the Muni A at the $248,000. And we have not received anything for local option tax, but we have received everything for FY '24. Everything that we received in August was applied to FY '24. The project worksheets have been updated, so if you have any questions, just shoot me an email. We can discuss any questions or concerns you may have. And I want to just go ahead and go to the property assessment values page.
Can we go back to the tourism
Yes,
funds again? It looks like for FY '24, last year, we were down in revenue,
that's correct.
but July and August of this year are up. Is that what?
For hospitality. Which one are you looking at?
Okay. Well, what I'm asking really is for, hospitality I see is up. What about the others?
Down.
Are down.
Yes.
The other tourism funds are the
Right.
accommodation, state and
Which
muni,
is
and
more-
we're tracking behind last year.
Okay, which is more visitors renting rather than just coming for.
So
meals.
that fee is paid by anybody who stays overnight, whether it's in a hotel or a
Okay.
short-term rental.
And do we show? Where is it? That's all right. Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a quick question? Last time we talked about this, last meeting, I think, and we talked about this phenomena where the first part of last year was up, the second half was down. So we're really, if we're tracking that, we're probably in the 20% down year over year as opposed to the 11%. So I know we were going to do some work on that and figure out sensitivity to that, to our budget, if we're really tracking that, what it means and anything, any proactive things we ought to be doing if that is true the case. But I don't know if you've had time to work on that or not. But it is something I think we should pay attention to and try to do some modeling of that if we're really down as far as what these numbers are suggesting. That what does that mean for our budget?
Would it be okay, maybe for the next workshop, take a look at, May, June, July, August on these major funds, the hospitality tax, 2 muni taxes, beach preservation, and compare it year over year? Because I think what we'll find if we use because that's going to be the heavy season that's in our fiscal budget for this year until we get to the next season. I think that's going to show us where we're trending down. We've got the big money months kind of behind us, at least with May, June, July, and August. I think July and August will be in the book. So we can look at those for trending. And then maybe, maybe we need to revisit some of the budget depending on the trend line.
So certainly can do that. Just keep in mind too, that even though when you look at this schedule and it shows the month that we receive the payment and where those heads and beds are reflected at, there's a timing difference there. It's not always perfect where, the payment we received in March that reflects the heads and beds in February. Oftentimes, they're paying several months.
Yeah, I'm not looking at the exact month by month. I'm
Yeah.
just
The
looking at
heads
the
and
trend.
beds.
I'm just looking at the trend of the thing.
Okay.
And what it suggests to me is that we were pretty positive the first part of the year relative to the previous year, and very negative the second part of the year relative to the previous year. So if you extrapolate that, and say we have a full year of negative, we're down by 20-something%. And if that really comes true for FY '25, and we're down 20-something% on our tax money, we only budgeted to be 10% down, so I just want to know what impact is that going to have on the budget if that comes true?
Yeah, and we need your advice on some of these. I know that the county payments are erratic, so you can't really see a trend except in a full year for those kind of things, but.
And it may not come true either. I mean, it may
We need
reverse itself
analysis
or do something else, but at least we're kind of modeling it and planning it, looking at it.
Yeah.
What, if that scenario came through, what does it mean?
Okay.
Well, if you look at October, it's much higher as far as the tourism
The
funds go
receipt, yeah.
than
Yeah.
23. So,
Yeah, that was my point.
well, that's October.
Yeah.
But it's much higher this year.
We haven't hit October.
We haven't, yeah, we're not in October
I mean,
yet.
October 24 over 23
Uh,
Yeah,
is much higher.
yep.
But that's over a year ago, yeah. Or that's a year ago.
Yeah, but it seems like 23 is a blip. To go down that much, revenues probably weren't received in time.
Yeah, that's
Goes
what I'm
over
saying. I
timing.
think there's a timing. You look at that 72,000 in
Yeah.
FY '23 compared to every other year, with the exception of 20 and FY '20.
Yeah, it's trending. Yeah, but we need in other words, I think what we're asking for is a clearer picture from y'all as to how to interpret all of this information. Sometimes it's an accounting or the time that we're receiving it. Sometimes it may be and we want to know whether it's an indicator, what to expect. Isn't that right?
I think when you look at year over year, that helps identify whether or not it's.
No, this is a great layout. I mean,
Correct.
it points it right out. I think what we're looking at is our fiscal year started at June, which is at the bottom of that 24 column. And if you just take those last few months, March, April, May, June, and you add those up, and now we have July, we're tracking down more like 20% than the 11% that's shown on the page. So this is our current fiscal year, that's what's in our current budget.
Yeah.
Those prior months in that column are not in our fiscal budget, those are.
Correct.
Those are historical. So we're just, it appears we're trending lower in some buckets, and we just kind of want to validate that.
From one year to the next, but you have to go back several years and understand what the effect COVID had and what the effect of the rebound was.
We're
Maybe
looking
those numbers
for,
were, maybe, if
Yeah.
you don't mind,
Yeah.
if those numbers are not typical of what's going on. I think, it was down, but you have to understand the history of what was going on the island.
Yeah, I agree,
Make
you do, but we
conclusions.
budgeted, Jimmy, versus last year. That's what I'm saying. We
We're not
budgeted
budgeting for
10% down versus where
2019.
we were last year. And if we're really tracking 20% down from last year, I just want to know what that means.
So tell me exactly how you get 20%?
Well, that's what if you take
take
the
a
second,
calendar year. Really.
Yeah, that's what it seems the numbers are suggesting, we're down on a full year basis,
Yeah, our
but.
high early months, years are rolling off. You're putting them on with
Exactly.
lower
Lower
months.
months.
exactly.
Yeah, so we can look at
Yeah, we can do that.
some numbers. And we're coming off of historically really high
Yeah.
average revenue night, which has also come down
Right.
for
Rates
sure.
are coming
So,
down.
which is all. All right, Deborah, you were headed to
So-
appraised value.
If you go back to pre-COVID,
Yeah,
then we were much higher,
But we're
even though
not,
we're down.
but we're not budgeting using pre-COVID numbers. We're
I'm not talking
budgeting
about
using
budget, I'm
last
just
year's
saying
numbers.
Yeah.
The raw data.
But don't we have to budget based on what we're anticipating our revenues to be?
Yes.
We
So-
budget
There's several
looking at
things
the
to
last 12
consider.
months actual.
Yeah.
Thank you. So
There's-
we're not looking at
I think,
2019 when we're budgeting. We're looking at 2023 when we're budgeting.
I think we're concerned about the windshield and not the rearview mirror is really what we're looking at here.
Well, there are two messages. Let's do both.
Yeah, I think we're cherry picking right now.
Okay, I guess we're moving on to assessment.
Yes, we are.
Moving on.
Okay,
Tamers.
so if you look at the highlighted values on your property assessment sheet, these are the numbers that we received from the county. And based on these numbers, that's where we're getting the 6.25% change from the previous year. We are budgeting, I think, budgeted. Total projected revenue of 6.5, budgeted revenue, including loss of 6.4, and so there it looks like it's a change of $139,000 where we will not have to change the millage or for operating our debt. Our second spreadsheet shows us how we come up with the credit factor, the loss credit factor. And these are based on the appraised value of what we actually did. The first calculation is what we actually, money we actually received in FY '24, and then our budget number of what we anticipating for FY '25. And that's how we conclude to the .0020 number that we are recommending.
And this will be presented again to you all on the council meeting in
'Cause you will
September
take
for
a
a
vote.
vote. Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
To set the millage rate.
And I know this is a little obscure, so if anybody has any questions, we can certainly have
A
an
little obscure.
offline.
You're going to come with the actual millage rate to the,
Yes.
yeah.
Well, we're not proposing any changes to the one that's included in the budget.
Right. Okay.
But we'll have the
But
current-
you'll vote on
current
that.
year.
Yes, sir.
We, I know the last meeting, we talked about having a conversation with David Cheatwood and his group. We did have a conversation with him, and he did present some schedules. He's proposing a comprehensive schedule of all the major funds that have revenue, which does not include our capital fund and some of the smaller funds. I know that council would like to see a comprehensive schedule that includes everything so we can kind of roll everything up into the budget. What they presented did not, because that is not the purpose of what they're trying to do for us. They're trying to come up with a comprehensive schedule that shows how we can pay for projects and how those funds can be pulled from one fund from another. So we do have an additional meeting with him scheduled for next week. We'll see what we can glean from that, because we know what council would like to see. As I stated earlier, based on what we've seen so far, we should see $1.7 million in excess revenue over expenses
For fiscal '24.
for fiscal '24. Do I want to make those recommendations? So what we would like to propose is something very similar to what we proposed last year, with one exception. We would like to propose 15% going to the general fund so we can keep that 30% allocation that we have where we need to cover expenses, 30% of expenses.
That's a policy council approved years ago to keep 30% of total expenditures in the general fund as part of the fund balance. And that's the only policy that we have for a fund balance target.
We would like to propose 5% going to the disaster recovery fund, 65% going to the capital fund, And then that leaves us 15%, which we would like to propose to go to the hospitality tax to cover the shortfall that we are seeing with the solid waste from the increases.
It covers the potential of what we're looking at doing.
Correct. I think we, and this
Couple hundred
rolls
thousand.
over into the conversation we have later on the agenda of what options do we have to pay for the excess cost that were not anticipated in the budget because of the increase in the fee. And one of the proposals is to use some of the overage, the positive net result from FY '24. So just looking at what we've done in the past in terms of how do we distribute that positive net, there's an option to transfer some 237,000 would be the city's shortfall in FY '25 that would be then transferred from that positive net result. And council doesn't have to decide on that now. You all always vote on how to distribute that positive net result later this month or even in October when we get closer to having the audit completed. But just, we wanted to give you an idea to think through that and to support the conversation later on about funds available to pay for that.
Can you just repeat? So was it 1.7
Yeah,
excess and we're talking about spending 237 of that?
So the impact of the FY
A
'25
small
budget
portion
will
of that
be
1.7.
two-thirds,
Correct.
yes.
So how much was going into the disaster recovery?
It's like 80.
5%, was 85,000.
80,000?
About 85,000.
That's growing with just the interest in that account, isn't it?
That's correct.
Yeah, because disaster recovery is about
3 something, yeah.
3.3.
3.5, somewhere in there.
So 5%, what are we getting, about 150 in interest on that, probably?
I
Yeah.
believe so.
Okay. Thanks.
And I think, a conversation at some point, to Desiree's comment, we've only got the general fund that has a target. Might be nice to have other targets for some of our fund balances. We've never had that. We just kept it at the general fund.
And that is
Level.
something that we have inquired of David Cheatwood.
To see what
To
others
provide
did.
some recommendations for capital projects and some of the other funds, since they'll have a comprehensive understanding of what we have for the next 10 years. So we'll be coming before that with some recommendations later on.
You want me to repeat the
If
numbers?
if we weren't to allocate that 1.7 to somewhere, whatever, where does it go? Is it just,
You have to.
You have to.
we have to allocate it?
Or if not, it would stay in the general fund.
But it could just stay in the general fund?
Could.
It could.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, and then you'd wind up with 40% of your expenses in the general fund. But the only way we get anything into the capital projects is through this transfer at the end of the year.
Yeah, it's the only way
Yeah.
you're ignoring the capital projects fund if you don't do anything.
But it's up to council.
Okay.
how-
So
how-
at this
So we'll
point,
vote. at-
Right.
we're not looking
September.
at a millage increase
That is correct. We're not looking at a
at
millage.
this point.
That's correct.
Correct. The millage that was contemplated in FY '25 is enough to cover what that was budgeted. We
To cover
budgeted to collect in revenues for FY '25.
No tax increase.
Yeah, it's interesting on the
No decrease.
county report, looking at the appraised value of things on this island. I think it was 5.5 billion, somewhere in there. It's interesting trend that sheet has. Amy, can you go back one page if you don't mind, please? Down at the bottom, it has the appraised value of
Yep.
5.6 something billion,
5.7 billion.
Yeah.
5.7 billion. It's interesting to look at that year over year. But- Deborah, you good?
I'm good. Are
You
you
sure?
guys good?
Yeah, thank you. And so again, we'll vote on the split either this month or next month, depending on the audit. Thank you, Deborah. Next item is procurement. First is approval of new building access control system for Public Safety Building and Fire Station 2. You can see where that's budgeted from. Both of these were approved at the committee level today, and Desiree, I'll let you hit on both of them. And then also approval of training IT upgrades in the Public Safety Building.
Correct. We went into some detail at the committee meeting earlier today. Both projects are included in the FY '25 budget. I believe your packet includes a detailed quote and memo from the chief recommending a vendor. Both vendors are on state contract, which we are exempted to doing a complete request for bids or proposals because the state has done that. So the vendors that are recommended meet that requirement. And they're both they're within the budget that was included in FY '25. One piece that I did want to add is for the new building access control system. The quote that's in your packet today only includes the expense associated with upgrading the public safety building. The budget includes doing the same at Fire Station 2. We have received an updated quote that is inclusive of both locations, and it totals about $181,000, so within the 190 that is budgeted. So we'll be presenting that updated quote to you for this council meeting when you vote.
You're going to look at sales tax.
Yes, and I don't believe we're exempted from that, but I'm looking into it and confirming
On either one of these purchases?
On both of them.
Gotcha.
on both of them.
Desiree, capital projects update, if you want to roll into that, please.
Yes, absolutely. We have received the announcement from FEMA that we received roughly $1 million for the construction of the Waterway Boulevard multi-use path. I
Yeah, should
know
we
I-
claim interest on that? I mean, 2 years later.
That's right.
Hey,
Don't ask us.
say thank you.
Say thank you and move
done.
on, got it?
Very, very
long time coming.
excited about that. We have a pre-construction workshop, a pre-construction meeting scheduled for later this month. I don't remember the date, but that's moving forward.
Could you put a little more meat on that bone? I've had a lot of people calling me complaining that we're not doing enough about drainage. And so I think we ought to just push this a little bit, both the Waterway Boulevard, what's been done, what just finished with 41st Avenue, and then with Phase 4.
And
could
maybe,
you-
maybe retitle this, because I know we have somewhere where it's drainage infrastructure, something else, we titled it somewhere that's more than just the path.
Yes,
And it's also the tie-in with Wild Dunes, because that's all.
correct. So on drainage, this year, the city completed Phase 3 drainage, and that includes outfall improvements to the 30th, 36th, and 41st Avenue outfall. That was a total of almost $7 million of an investment. About 3.5 were covered by a grant from the South Carolina Office of Resilience. The cost for the 30th and the 36th outfall were paid by the city through a GO bond that the city issued a couple of years ago. Phase 4 started the design earlier this year. City hired Thomas and Hunt to start working on drawings for improvements to Palm Boulevard between 38th and 41st. That was one of the areas that were identified as high priorities by the drainage comprehensive master plan that Davis and Floyd produced for the city last year. While there are other areas that were also identified as high priorities, this area was selected as the next project because we're trying to coordinate some of the work that the Water and Sewer Commission is doing on that same section and try to minimize the disruption and maybe get some cost savings if we can get it all done. So that's the Phase 4, Phase 4 drainage project that's underway. The Waterway Boulevard multi-use path, it's started as a very simple, let's fix the Waterway Boulevard path, so people don't, they enjoy a wider path, and I think, as part of the work that we've been doing with master planning all of these projects, we saw an opportunity to raise that path to increase the level of protection to that entire basin, middle section of the island. So council 2 months ago decided to pursue with enhancing the level of protection that we had anticipated at 6 feet to 7 feet. Thomas and Hutton is almost completed with the design and will be submitting for permits this month in September. Permits, as you all know, we're looking at 12 months for permits to be secured, particularly those that require a critical area permit and a joint application from the Corps and the state. So that is what makes this a little bit complicated. But the good thing is, City Council last year authorized the design and permitting for that to start even before we get a notification from FEMA. If we had not done that, we would be starting that design and permitting process today.
All of that is expected to alleviate the ponding that we currently have on Palm Boulevard when there's a big rainstorm.
On waterway.
Not
That's
all.
what I meant. I meant waterway.
That's what you said.
On waterway.
Well, that's what it is.
Which one?
He's not happy.
Okay. I'd like to make sure that we clarify too. I've been getting some questions about the golf course work.
Yes.
Wild Dunes is doing the golf course work, and they are working closely with us, benefiting our project because raising the path could have an effect on berms on the golf course, which they are more than willing to work with us on. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we are taking advantage of the fact that the Wild Dunes Resort will be making improvements to their golf cart. In order for us to effectuate the level of protection at 7 feet, the only option we have is doing it through some areas of the golf course. So they have been willing to do that. We've been working on them. Thomas and Hutton is not only designing our project, but also working with them. So that facilitates a lot of the logistics and,
Design.
logistics. So that is ongoing.
But we are not paying for the golf course improvements.
We are paying for the additional cost to what they are doing that's benefiting our project.
So what is, refresh my memory, we were at 1.2 originally, then we went to 1.7. What is the city's estimated price tag for the project now, the city's portion of that? Or do we have that number yet?
We do have an estimate. Until we go to construction and bid a project, we won't know for sure. The original project, as it was presented to FEMA, was a million.
Okay.
After that, we added some drainage infrastructure improvements to waterway between 21st and 23rd Avenue, and this is after the December storm from last year that we saw significant flooding there. I believe the cost of that was about $300,000 to add that section to the project. And then we're looking at an additional $500,000 for elevating the path another foot.
And take it through the golf course?
Yes, sir.
So about 1.8 if I was following you.
Correct.
With the $1 million grant coming our way.
Correct. Of that almost $1 million would be covered by FEMA.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Desiree,
Is that
just-
okay, Blair?
Perfect.
I
But
can
think
keep going.
Also, what doesn't need to get lost, through Donnie and team, with hires and equipment that we've purchased, while it's not ribbon cutting level material, I mean, there is a lot of work going on, just basic blocking and tackling with cleaning ditches and clearing out. I mean, you see Linton and Robert all over the place. So Donnie, thank you and team. I mean, that has made a significant difference, in my opinion, with what, again, a couple of hires and a couple of pieces of equipment. I mean, it's basic blocking and tackling that we just have not been able to do over the years. And we've had to use EDs and others, but now we've got it in-house. So, and Douglas, I know you've been intricately involved in all that, so thank you all for that. I think it's a big piece that gets lost in some of these $2, $3, $5 million numbers around the way, but this is day-to-day doing what needs to happen.
That's correct.
Sorry, Desiree, go ahead.
So on the sea level rise adaptation plan, we've received a draft document from Seaman Whiteside that we're reviewing. Our goal would be to bring them forward at the October meeting for our presentation to City Council.
Is that draft something that we can read, or is that something you're?
We would prefer to go,
No, okay.
at least
That's- I was
let
just
us go
asking.
through.
I didn't know
the-
how drafty it was.
It does have some,
It's
It
when the
does have
wind's
some-
blowing.
Wind's blowing, okay, no worries.
yeah, some errors in
Yeah,
it that we would
that's
want to
okay.
clean up.
Yeah, we clean up, we can, share that in draft form after that. For the IOP Marina, the public dock and green space, you can see the gangway and the floating dock have been installed. There's a few pending items, including utilities. That should be completed by now. And then this month, the kayak launch materials, and this is specifically the contraption that will help people with ADA, that will make the kayak launch ADA compliant, that will be built this month. Interestingly, the swings have been the most difficult, and and I was a big proponent of the swings, so we'll take it, but they're in production. I haven't received an ETA yet, but probably another month. And also the logo. We have a big, beautiful logo for the, for the big
They look
unit.
good, yeah.
And that's also under fabrication.
The life rings, three have been hung.
We have 3 life rings at the public dock, so we should
and
be
they are up?
very safe there. Marina dredging, we have a pre-application meeting with the Corps later this month, so that's moving slowly, but it's moving along. Let's see, construction for the ADA boardwalks, as you all know, council approved that contract last month, so we've executed that, and those should be completed January 2020, it should say 2025, I'm sorry for that typo. Then we have an RFP for the construction of boardwalks, and these, as we've talked about, are not ADA compliant, but would be significant improvements to 26A and 36A. That deadline is later this month, and we'll be presenting our application for funding to the Greenbelt Board tomorrow.
Douglas. You're good.
Douglas will represent us really well. Beach restoration, a lot of stuff happening here. The latest orders were sandbags for Breach Inlet between 104 to 304. A section on Ocean Boulevard, that's ongoing. Also, additional bags for Beechwood East between 11 and 20, not including 18 Beechwood East. We're really restricted on how quickly the manufacturer of these sandbags can produce them, so we get a shipment almost every week. We think in a couple weeks, both projects should be completed. The Wild Dunes Shoal Management Project application looks like it's very close to being issued. We received a note today just asking for some minor punch lists, so hopefully we can get this project done this winter.
That's a quick question about the beach bags down on the south end of the beach. I think when we approved the plan, it was for 4 bags high along the 1,500-foot stretch, and I may be missing my count to 4, but I think we've only got them stacked 3 high. Is there a reason that they're stacked 3 instead of 4? Is it a logistical issue?
So we
or
are
less
definitely,
bags?
as Desiree mentioned, we're limited in what we can put out by how quickly they can be manufactured. So we have been kind of putting what we can in the most emergent places and then moving to the next kind of hot spot. So we have been bouncing around a little bit more than we would have liked to, and that does include, I think right now, I think it is 3 high.
Will there be another layer eventually?
And so we have more properties, yes.
Okay.
So we have a full, we have the full order of bags coming. And I can't tell you that it's going to be exactly 4 high. The method of setting the elevation is like a surveying transit to be sure that the top is level, more so than the thickness. So the number of bags stacked was their estimating tool, but to actually place the wall, they're surveying it and getting it all to the same elevation. So you don't have bags that are going unnecessarily high in certain places, and you're using those in other places. So we have been bouncing around in terms of location and the level of protection, just given that we're kind of getting an occasional shipment. Well, it's a steady shipment, but it's only enough to do a few properties each week.
There's also a place on Wild Dunes where there's exposed rock at the beach. Are you aware of that?
Yeah, there's a handful of
There's a handful of revetments.
pre-existing revetments that predate the Beach Management Act that are allowed to stay there. They're there, they get repaired, and they've kind of always been there.
They've
Okay.
been there for many, many, many years.
But they were covered with sand until
Yes.
just recently.
Yeah, they get,
It's not new.
They get uncovered.
they get
Okay,
uncovered
that's right.
in these type of
Again.
events. Yeah.
Okay.
On the Army Corps of Engineers project, we're still waiting on a permit for the city supplemental work. The operator has not yet started pumping sand on Sullivan's Island.
There is a piece of equipment on Sullivan's Island, so that's positive.
They're moving slow, but not yet started. And as you all know, we are 6 weeks from the date, what we've been told is 6 weeks after they start pumping at Sullivan's, that's when we should expect them to mobilize to the Palms, but that start date hasn't yet started. I believe we have a meeting with them on Monday, next Monday, but we've already inquired and we're waiting on information from the Corps. But they keep I mean, you can see when you go over the connector, they're actively dewatering and clearing the site that the sand will be coming from.
Have they
for the Palms.
indicated to you the quality of that sand or anything yet, or is that what you're finding out on the 17th, or?
So Douglas had a conversation with one of the Aetna folks that is working on the site and indicated that it looks like the quality of the sand that's coming for Palms is very, very favorable.
Yeah, we've had, I think we learned that the top layer of the material, they always expected that it would have a lot of organics in it. It's black. It looks to the layperson like topsoil.
Yeah.
I think seeing the piles, it's like, is that what you anticipated? So we've been asking steadily about that question, and we are consistently getting back that it is what they expected, that they did a lot of boring samples to ensure that it was proper beach-compatible sand. I mean, we did know from the very beginning that it had some of that silt in it, which is the reason it was designed the way it was, and they've been very upfront about, we don't think it's appropriate to be right on the beach, on the dry sand beach, right out of the pipe. So that is,
It filters out.
they've told us since the beginning that it was going to need some filtering. So I think that we consistently ask the question and we consistently hear back that it is coming out to be about what they expected.
And also, one thing to note is the contract requires them to remove the first 6 inches. And so a lot of what we're seeing, the mud is that first layer. That is the material that is being burned. We all heard that there was going to be some burning and some clearing. So that material is not coming to the beach. And we all saw that.
Yeah, we can
So-
see piles of jet black stuff.
And
and
they're like, that's
kind of-
not coming. It's
yeah,
like, no,
they've
that's
confirmed
that's
not
that
coming.
six inch layer that is being removed. All right, so I'll keep going. City Hall renovation, we had Trident and MPS present some additional information and cost estimates to the public services facilities today. The committee did ask them to come back to the workshop in October. I told them October 15th, but that was not wrong. That was wrong. The workshop is on the 8th. So we've clarified with them, and they'll be presenting a high-level analysis of the building assessment conducted, the options that were developed and the committee has discussed, and sort of even though the committee hasn't yet made a recommendation, there seems to be consensus about among the options and consensus on one. So we'll have that October 8th, they'll be here. Undergrounding power lines, we had a pre-construction meeting on Friday of last week, and they are anticipating starting construction within the next 30 days, and construction to last potentially 60 days here or there. So
We could have a little lottery. Who's going to go first, Dominion or Army Corps?
I got a good feeling about Dominion Energy.
That's positive, yeah, that's good.
All right, that's all I have, Mayor.
Once you hit the 21st sidewalk, if you don't mind, that was
Oh.
nice and critical for me.
Nothing new from last month.
Okay.
They've approved the design, and I think they're still looking at construction starting next year.
Same. Got it.
Same as last month.
Fair enough.
And what about Palm Boulevard project?
So we haven't,
What's on the sheet is it.
correct, but, there's some discussion about the city staff having meetings with SCDOT this quarter after the season, so we'll be restarting some of these conversations with them at that point.
Thank you, Desiree.
You're welcome.
Next item, strategic plan, policy initiatives and priorities, nothing for livability or environmental. Public Services. We have a discussion of bulk container collection services and recommendation from the Public Services and Facilities Committee to enter into a contract with the lowest responsible vendor for bulk container collection and disposal for condominiums and businesses through October 31st, 2025. And after that, businesses would be responsible for their own bulk container services. You'll recall, last council meeting, this was up for a vote. There was desire for further discussion from some members. We're bringing it back to workshop today to be voted on at September council meeting. Just from a timing standpoint, we cannot go past the end of September make this thing happen in February. Desiree, do you mind just at a really high level, just talk about kind of the next 13 months, if you will, and kind of the process and what's come out of committee, just so we're all grounded, if you don't mind?
Well, we only have a plan through end of January. In July, City Council authorized extending the agreement with our current provider through the end of January, so for 6 months. The rate that we're paying now is $375 per yard. So I've included, I think, page 65 in your packet includes the monthly cost to the city at that rate. And then the monthly cost to the city potentially at $250 if it selects a different vendor based on the responses to the request for proposals starting February. So we need direction from council what happens after January. The committee made a recommendation to engage the lowest responsible vendor that responded to the request for bids starting February 1st and continue to service all of the vendors, commercial and condos, through the end of October of 2025. And then starting November 1st, only service condominiums, and businesses at that time would be responsible for entering into a contract with a bulk container vendor to collect their bulk container materials. So right now, we are covered through the end of January, 6 months. The decision would be what happens after those 6 months.
Got it. And I guess if you went forth with what the committee has brought out, end of January or during January, whatever, a fair amount of coordination would need to happen between the two vendors so there's not a miss.
Correct.
Old dumpsters go away, new dumpsters come in, make sure collections are happening. But again, that's on those two vendors to make that happen. Just trying to make sure we're not putting a lot of work on you guys to make all this happen. I know there's coordination with the vendor, but
Correct.
it's
So
really them to make that happen.
So what would need to happen is once we make a decision about who is going to be servicing starting February 1st, that vendor has to bring their containers to these same sites, and the current vendor would be removing those if we go to a different vendor. Then that would need to happen. And some vendors have bulk containers in stock that they can mobilize pretty quickly. I believe based on the number of cans, we've been told that most of them would have to order some. So we would want to make sure that we give them enough time to make that order, receive them, and have time to make that swap before the contract begins.
But we'll be voting on this month, and so that would be plenty of time, right? From
Yes.
September to
Yes, we believe so.
So you said
January.
you're going to continue to service the condominiums. Is that right?
So that is the recommendation from the Public Services and Facilities Committee, was that the city would, starting February, with a new vendor, continue to service through the season, the same as we have done historically. And then through October 31st. So November 1st, the city's vendor would continue to service condominiums, but all commercial entities would then have to cover their own.
Why is that?
Because of the cost increase.
Because of the cost increase, because of the fact that no other city does this, because of the fact that we have talked to the head of the Chamber of Commerce, and he believes that this is completely reasonable and fair. because of the fact that this is an expense that should not be borne by the residents of this city, but should be borne by the businesses that are making a profit on the island.
Did you talk to anybody besides the chair, the president of the Commerce Association? Did you talk to individual businesses?
We have,
We only, the city and the committee heard from Rod Turnage representing the businesses,
Who represents the Commerce Association?
correct, which most of the businesses are members of.
Members of.
And we felt like that was a good,
Well, I can tell you that the businesses themselves do not agree with Mr. Turnage's representations.
I would say these meetings are public and certainly they're advertised and this information was made public. So any member of our business community would have the opportunity to come speak to the committee and make that known. I think we were just trying to.
we've been talking about this for months now, and, you know, we've gotten a few emails, but we've also gotten people saying that, you know, it's the price of doing business. I mean, this is, you know, businesses that on Sullivan's Island, Mount Pleasant, Charleston, everywhere else, it's the price of doing business.
And then negotiated, sorry, you may say.
I understand that, but I'm just saying it's a big change and a big shock to a lot of these businesses that
We're giving them
they
over
haven't
a
had to
year.
deal with in the past, and there's no reason to get ugly about it, but it's just saying that they are under, you know, enormous pressure with inflation and everything going up, and they're being loaded in with another expense that 6 months ago they didn't know they were going to have to deal with, and so they're just very concerned about it.
And we're being very generous in giving them over a year to get on, you know, to get ready for this, and we'll do everything that we can to facilitate the new vendors, and, you know, I mean, it's, change happens.
two things.
Sometimes things have to change.
I think, to your point, you know, again, I think the committee did great work in coming back with a 13, 14-month runway, if you will, and the city has negotiated a pretty decent price that they couldn't get on their own, in my opinion. Ashley, sorry.
I mean, so just a couple of questions. You know, why, and this is, sorry if this is naive, but why do we continue to pay for the condos?
That is totally up to the city. I think
It's
that one of
considered
the.
residential.
No,
One
yeah,
of the
I mean,
first
so-
conversations was that it's mostly residential, even though a lot of the condominiums are mostly short-term rentals. A lot of the transition from these condominiums to bulk container has been generated by the city and by the Public Works Department in trying to create efficiencies. And rather than, you know, emptying, you know, 20, 30 single cans, that, you know, there's a bulk container. So a
But
lot
also,
of them have
so, I
been.
mean, I asked the question today, we talked today about potentially charging for additional rollout cans at residences, regardless of what the residence is used for. And we kind of.
Over two, if you have more
Right,
than
right,
two.
yes, sorry. So, and we kind of, I think, landed on the fact that 2 is pretty, maybe reasonable. You know, most residences have 2, some have a few more, and if they have more, then they could pay for it on their own. And I asked the specific question of these condos, back when they were rollout, did any of the condos, you know, an individual condominium unit, did any of them have more than 2 rollout carts? And they said no. So they would be being treated like any other residential unit on the island. And that, to me,
I mean, I guess I just don't really, I mean, if they're a 6% condo, then technically, you know, a lot of people call them businesses because they're renting.
but they're
Yeah.
not, I mean,
Perhaps.
but just because I mean, there's a lot of residents on this island, single-family homes that are paying 6%. I don't think we're going to start, you know,
I mean, I'm not saying that, but.
going into
I mean, I guess
how
I'm
you.
just kind of curious, I mean, you know, I know the condos take in HOA fees and they pay into that, I mean, what does that, you know, entail? And then also, you know, looking at each individual condo building, the percentage of rentals compared to actual full-time residents. It seems like maybe some of the ATAX money could cover some of those funds instead of, you know. just something
For condominiums? Or for condominiums?
for condos, yeah.
So
I mean, to
we're, I mean,
cover-
we're covering that. I mean, the
Right,
city's gonna
that's-
pay for it out of ATAX money.
It does come from the tax money.
It comes from the hospitality
Hospitality
tax,
today,
because it's one contract.
Yeah.
If the city were to only service condominiums in the future, I would and I would propose in FY '26 that that expenditure comes from the accommodations tax fund rather than hospitality.
We also talked about, because there's some houses that have 10 cans, and they fill them up, and so every week, we're dumping 10 cans, sometimes twice a week. And that didn't seem to us to be appropriate, that the city's carrying that burden when you've got basically a business being run. And so that's why we decided, well, 2 cans, most people only use 1 can, give everybody 2 cans in a residential unit, and if it's more than 2 cans, then you just have to pay the addition. That was the logic and why we came up with.
Well, and the twos in
what
our,
we're talking
in our
about.
code, right?
Yeah,
For a
we-
business.
For
Yeah,
business,
We're just applying
So
it to a
it's an easy,
residential.
it just,
Right.
it seems to just flow
And
to
the
to the two.
technology currently exists, and we're getting ready to change over all of this to different types of trucks and cans. The technology exists that you can track how many pounds of trash you pick up at each house through barcodes, which I thought was fascinating. I didn't
Yeah,
realize
I
you
know.
could do that. So.
We learned a lot about trash
We'll
today.
have a much better handle on
The
all
tech is
this
everywhere.
A few years from now.
It's amazing.
Big brother, yeah,
So Ashley, is that,
going through our trash.
I mean,
Well, if
and
there's a
then-
body in the trash can, then you know. Wow.
Or a lot of wine bottles.
No, that's why you have to use the glass
recycle,
recycling.
that's right.
Free.
Ashley, what else?
So, and I'm sorry if I'm
Just get
bringing this
closer to
back
the
up,
mic.
but, sorry. But, just, I know we talked briefly about, but I don't really remember where we landed about the businesses just reimbursing the city, like, and attaching it to their business renewal license. I mean, do we ever, like, discuss that?
It's been discussed at the committee level. I don't know,
Okay.
Desiree, we
Yeah.
just don't have staff.
We don't, it's oftentimes that it's easier for communities that charge for utilities, so they already have a billing system in place. We do not. And we currently seek reimbursement for the user fee for those businesses that utilize the municipal compactor. And that's only 10 businesses, right? 10? 11, 10 or 12. And that takes a lot of time.
I was gonna say, that's still a lot.
That is very cumbersome.
Cumbersome.
So the idea of the city becoming the collection, if they're going to be paying for it either way, we don't see necessarily a benefit that outweighs the challenges that would be if the city were to be the one collecting and seeking reimbursement, and if the business goes out of, if the business changes hands, are they gonna seek, a refund from the city because they paid for the year? I just think we are not set up to become a collection agency for garbage. And if that is the will of
makes
council,
sense.
certainly we will look and see how we do it. But I think if ultimately the council believes that this is a cost that businesses should be paying themselves, then it's not unlike how this is set up in other communities where they themselves contract with a vendor and they pay them directly depending on the amount of trash that they generate and get collected and pay that directly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then we talked about with Deborah, since this is an unbudgeted fiscal '25 number, we'll take that out of the overage, fiscal '24 overage, and then we'll have opportunity to place it into the fiscal '26 budget
26 budget.
when we get there.
And it is, we are, or we think we can lock into the $2.50 cheaper come February.
Yes, so that would be
That-
that contract would start that date. And they have indicated that they will offer the same rate to any business that stays with that
Great.
vendor.
That's great.
Yeah.
So we're setting it up for the businesses to
They can opt in.
somehow opt into it without having to go through the city after October.
Yes, if that is the will of council.
That's pretty good.
Well, and I think our hope is the new vendor will have, a vendor will have 6, 7 months of delivery of
interview.
service. Yeah, kind of an interview process. And I think there's a hope and an assumption that the businesses would just tack on to that cheaper rate and somebody that's already got a can there and used to the route.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that'll remain to be seen, but that's certainly the hope, I think.
But if any business feels that they can opt out.
They got a
Right.
guy, they have a guy.
Yeah, they can hire their own guy. I guess they can haul it away themselves if they want.
So we'll have this on the agenda for the.
Yeah, what else on this topic? Because
I think we've
Time
done enough
is-
trash talking.
becoming of the essence.
So we'll vote on it, and then we'll be able to move forward with assuming that,
And
Yes, we'll-
I think that,
what day
just
was
to
today?
note, we made some changes to the
24th.
schedule that's included in your packet from what we've distributed in the past. So there's a breakdown of the expense per month and the different rate, the total cost based on the different rate per yard and the number of months, depending on what option city council decides. So if, assuming, we've already, month of July, the cost was $3 per yard, and that was a cost of $24,000 for that month to the city. Then the existing 6-month extension from August through it should say January, at $375, that's a cost of $177,000. Then March through July, 5 months at $250, that would be $102,000. So the total cost for that, for FY '25, would be $303,000. We budgeted $66,000 based on the old rate. So there's a budget variance of $237,588. We talked about options to cover that additional cost, and then the remaining months after July through October, that's something that could be included in the FY '26 budget. But for FY '25, we'll be down $237,000.
What else on this topic? 'Cause we're
A
going-
lot, but I'm not gonna go into it tonight.
This is our last shot.
Well, we gotta vote on it, right?
Yep.
Okay, it's not our last shot.
All right, next item. Discussion of proposed employee referral incentive program. I know this was talked about at committee today, and I think there may be some minor modifications with what's in your packet. So John or Desiree or Janice, whomever.
The purpose of this program would be to, again, it's just part of an ongoing effort for recruitment and retention. We believe that sometimes our own employees can generate excellent referrals for people that they know to come work for the city. So this policy would encourage and incentivize referrals. Regular and part-time employees would be eligible to participate in the program. One of the topics that we talked at the administration committee was to add another layer of, for temporary workers, for example, beach service officers or interns, that maybe a different rate, maybe not 500, but 250, if they complete their seasonal work, as we anticipate when we hire them, to include them as part of the as an eligible employee or eligible receiver of the program or participant of the program. So we'll be making those changes and presenting that to you all at the end of the month for you all to vote. But essentially, the employee that refers an employee that successfully completes their 6-month probationary period would receive a $500 reward. And then you can see some guidelines. If there's any specific questions, let me know.
I think it's a great idea.
Is this something we're gonna vote on?
Yeah.
At the next meeting?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think it's great.
Nothing yet.
Okay. Next item is a couple of citizen engagement for the community. The first item is a youth council. You've got a couple of pieces in your packet. Amy, I don't know if you can put them on the screen or not if you have them, but first one is a youth council, and this has been kind of on my to-do list for quite some time, but a lot of some communities around the state have them. I looked in Florida, I looked in North Carolina, South Carolina around youth councils, and they are typically high school students. I've had a couple of email exchanges with the Wando leadership, and I'm meeting with them in a couple of weeks just to pick their brain a little bit, assuming we get give a head nod to this, but I don't know how many students we're talking about that live on, Katie and I had some quick conversations, we'll need to be sure we get private schools and homeschooled and all flavors of it if we have enough high school students to do that. I just think it'd be a great way to get the next generation involved and, get them, let them have a voice into the community. So I'm just gonna assume you've read this, so I'm happy to answer questions or if you have edits or just general thoughts around it.
Do we have any idea how many teenagers we have?
That's what I just said, I have no idea.
So,
Well, the
so there's,
census,
Census numbers there, but
Census.
400 to 500,
Okay.
under the age of 18. So that's the category,
Under
so,
0 to 18?
yes, ma'am.
Oh,
we should probably make sure they're a
not
little bit
zero.
older.
Not 0, 1.
But, I mean,
somewhere.
We
in
can
the-
act like it.
there are considerable amount of kids out here. When I spoke with Philip about it, I kind of thought that, your high school kids are going to be more interested in it because of resume building. Your middle school kids might be more interested in it because of a genuine interest. So, I mean, I think it would be an interesting thing to try
Yeah.
and maybe start with a small number. And if you get a ton of interest, then you can always make it bigger and, I feel like it
Yeah,
doesn't
keep it
really hurt
manageable.
to
Yeah.
try.
Mhm.
It may end up being great. And,
I'd serve pizza at the meetings, more will come.
yeah, I was gonna say, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, we've got it down at quarterly meetings right now. I mean, that can fluctuate. I mean, everything can fluctuate. It's total draft at this point. But if y'all are good, I will just continue on with, the Wando folks and hear what they have to say, try to get a handle on how many high school students we're talking about on the island, whether they're homeschooled or private schooled or in Wando, or some I know are trickling to Lucy Beckham.
Don't say
But
that out
we'll have
loud.
to- We'll have to figure that out. Is there any other comments, thoughts, observations? Go forth. Next one is, Ashley and I had some conversations, gosh, it's been a bit ago around this. And kind of hearkening back to when we all first walked in these doors from a council member standpoint. When you're listening to citizens' comments, it's rarely a two-way conversation. You ask a question and sometimes that happens, but, mostly it's a talk at us. And if you're not, other than taking the initiative and having, a lot of conversations outside of a council meeting with some residents, it's kind of a one-by-one conversation. So conversation Ashley and I have, is there some, and Desiree, is there some semi-structured way that you could, have council/resident interaction? And Desiree's had conversations with Mac around this, and that's where the no agenda, no live stream comments come in. Obviously, it's an advertised meeting, but really just an informal roundtable conversation with council and residents that want to do it at the rec center. I think we try it a couple of times a year. Again, to me, it feels like there's not a downside. Most of the mayor coffees that we've had for almost 3 years now, that's a very cordial environment. It's a conversational. It's not threatening in any way, shape, or form, and that would be my hope, for this one as well. So again, I'm just going to assume you've read it and studied it thoroughly. So I'm happy to answer questions or hear your feedback. Again, just trying another way to let residents have a voice into the process.
Just a curiosity, out of the coffees that you hold, is it one-on-one or is it small groups or?
Small groups, usually it's anywhere from 10 to 25 folks every
okay.
Friday. Not every Friday, every month.
So it's sort of
One Friday.
formalizing that at a different level is what
Yeah.
you're thinking of?
Coffee with council.
Could be.
So it's not considered a quorum because we're in small groups and not all in one conversation? Is that what?
No, it would be a quorum, and it would have to be advertised.
So it would be a meeting. It would
But no
just be a-
minutes.
Correct.
No agenda.
There's
minutes, yeah.
you're having small roundtable conversations. I think the mayor has thought about, a couple tables and
No, I
have
think
one or
it's-
two members in each, depending on the amount of people that show up. So I think as long as it's advertised, that's a key.
Yeah.
You're not making, when it becomes a meeting is when you all are discussing an issue and taking action on an issue. This would be more of a seeking input type of environment.
Would there need to
I
be
think it's a good
minutes or
idea.
any kind of record?
You all will not be taking
No
any
minutes, no
action.
live stream.
Correct, there's
Okay.
no,
No, we
So
don't.
we
Oh,
can't,
that's
we
good.
can,
Sorry, Nicole.
it's very similar.
more meetings.
More meetings.
I can't listen to 4 tables at one time. I'm good, but.
Give me a break.
Yes, you can.
Well, once, and this, I've had a conversation with Mac at a very high level. If the method or the setup changes, that might generate some changes, and maybe we do need an agenda. We'll make sure that whatever you all decide to want to do, that we comply with the Freedom of Information Act and.
I think the less we can adhere to is, I like the informal structure.
Yeah.
I think that's going to get more interaction generated.
Yeah.
And the whole point of this, or kind of talking with the mayor about it, was being new, I felt it kind of challenging to, I don't know, keep like a pulse on the community besides your own like little bubble, that you stay in. So I thought this might be a good opportunity to try to engage with different people and give people, sometimes people have like misleading information and you can have a chat about it, and it, like the mayor's coffees are very educational and helpful. And I just thought it would be helpful to have council members participate or not participate, you're not required to show, but, just open the door for that communication.
Good idea.
Blair just pulled his head up for the first time. I'm not required to show. That's
Yeah, exactly. Don't worry, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, every council member, every time is invited. I mean, I know our schedules won't always allow all of us to be there every time, but
We're looking at what, 2 a year here with this
I
frequency?
think
Yeah.
just to start it,
Yeah.
I think we can try and pull one off this fall and just see how it goes, and then try in the spring. Sorry, Jan, go ahead. Good.
After the election.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. Desiree or Douglas, any other? And we have staff
on election day,
participate
we
if
get a lot of
schedule
people.
permits, but we didn't really talk about a time of day. I guess we could shift it around depending on people's schedules.
I was gonna say, maybe do ones in the morning and once in the
one at night.
evening or
Yeah.
something like that.
Okay, more to come on that. So I don't know if we'll have to take a formal vote on both or some of these or not, but we'll figure that out. Legislative report, nothing there because they are still out of session at this point. Miscellaneous, we have our next city council workshop, 5 PM, October 8th. No further business.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Off record.